Could I invite George Parker from Free Theatre Christchurch to come forward, please? Morning, George.
Morning.
Nice to see you again.
You too. Thank you, Mayor, councillors, for the opportunity to speak to you today. Please forgive me if I sound a little bit tired, look a little bit tired. We're currently racing towards a production on Thursday in the Arts Centre in our space, which I know you're all coming to, so we're looking forward to seeing you. And I apologise also for the thing that's running across my face. That's a result of the production. I guess the main thing that I felt would be useful to speak to in terms of our submission, which is really focused on and around nurturing local talent towards a more vibrant, interesting, cutting-edge city, all of the things that are featured in the LTP. How exactly to achieve that? I thought perhaps a way of approaching that might actually be to share how I come to be here, because I really didn't intend to be in Christchurch. I went to school here, and my first thoughts were about leaving, because I wanted to be an actor, and at the school I was at, and my one particular teacher said, if you want to be an actor, you don't stay in Christchurch, you actually don't even stay in New Zealand, you go away to London, you go away to Sydney. So that was my intention, was actually to go to Sydney, to go to NIDA, the drama school there. And I started working at a place called Vortex in Seafield, just outside of Ashburton, a freezing works, towards making money towards going to that drama school. And I got a little bit bored while I was raising the money, so I took some papers at the university, theatre papers, and there I started to be introduced actually to the history of theatre, a sense of its traditions, but also a much more contemporary idea of theatre, which until that stage I didn't really know much about, because my experiences had been here, the court theatre, the amateur theatres that imitate them. So I had a very Anglo view of theatre, and then suddenly here was this new world that was opened up to me. At the same time I saw a production in the Arts Centre, in the old Free Theatre, and it completely blew my mind. And it was the theatre was completely converted into a nightclub for a production of Heinemüller's Medea material. Every space was used, the toilet, under the stage, over the stage, in the audience. You were very much a part of the action. And I remember at the time my peers at the university and I went about 4 or 5 times, and afterwards would meet to just talk it through, because it was incredible, and we thought this is what theatre could be, and this was something that, you know, this city could really help nurture. So I did go to NIDA, I did audition in NIDA, I got into NIDA, but I decided to come back here and continue at the university and to join the Free Theatre. And I decided that it was a difference between becoming an actor, a commercial entity, and becoming an artist. Even saying that now, it sort of makes me feel a little uncomfortable, because to say you're an artist for a Kiwi male was a challenging thing. But nevertheless, that is what I decided to do, and that's what I've been doing ever since, with my colleagues and I in a number of different organisations and artists, because that's what we do, we work between disciplines. We've been creating work, particularly, some of you may be familiar in the post-quake environment. Work that's been created includes Free Theatre members have started Gap Filler, Festa, and then of course a number of other organisations. We've started the theatre in the Arts Centre, the gym, and Free Theatre's done a number of productions in and around the city that very much engage with this time and place, because this is the most interesting thing to us in terms of making art, is to engage with the time and place, and to see art as not something that's just a distraction from everyday life, but a way of engaging with it and talking through ideas, problems, provoking conversation. So I look at the LTP, and I asked whether, I guess, the kind of activity that people like me and others have stayed in the city to create, is it being catered for, or is it being acknowledged? Certainly, the council's worked very hard to try and make these things happen, particularly in the post-quake period, and I think some of the initiatives that have come through have been truly wonderful and should be the basis to now this next phase where we start looking at what does the city look like 10, 20 years from now. How do we start to build on those foundations something that can really grow and develop? I think the main thing, obviously, and many arts organisations, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing this, have brought up about the idea of the need for a new arts policy, and there is obviously provision within the new plan for a refresh of that policy, and the governance group has been started. I would question whether that governance group, how that's going to operate, that there are people that are actually working on the ground that are involved in that conversation, so that we don't just repeat the same models from elsewhere and the same things that have happened historically. Because historically, artists haven't been nurtured here. A lot of them have left. Many of my colleagues go elsewhere, like I wanted to do. So I think that strategy very much needs to be based around input from people that are working on the ground, so that they can really find a way to share what exists, what's actually here, what we do, what could be, and then how we bridge the two together, because there's not really a clear mapping of all the different groups and what they do and what's relative, and that's where it gets frustrating, where a group like ours, which is struggling to continue and finding it very challenging to operate in the city, central city, but really desperately wanting to, when we hear about millions for a new performing arts precinct, and we're asked whether we want to participate in that, and of course we could, and we would like to, but nobody's really asked us what we're doing or looking at what we've actually created. And that's why it would be wonderful if you did come along to Alice and see what we've actually created specifically for this production as a black box theatre, for you to see actually what you can do with not so much money, but with passion and a view and a vision of what is possible in a building like the one that we've created. I think particularly around festivals and events with Christchurch, New Zealand, there needs to be some sort of provision, encouragement to base festivals around local talent, nurturing local talent. At the moment, most of the time, it's imported. So if festivals, the Christchurch Arts Festival was a Christchurch Arts Festival, was based around local talent. If the Jazz and Blues Festival was, the Buskers or whatever it's going to be, that would be enormously helpful in building a sense of activity and purpose and life in the city, because those artists are told that they can function here and they can create things. I think particularly, there's various ideas I think around what is distinct to this city. To me and this region, we're not Aucklanders. Aucklanders are Aucklanders, Wellingtonians are Wellingtonians, Dunedinites, we're Cantabrians, we're not Christchurchians. The province is very much key to our identity. Urban and rural are very much core. So if there's an engagement around art, food is the most interesting conversation here. If the Christchurch Arts Festival brought together chefs and artists, imagine what might be possible. Okay, that's it. Just spieling now.
Thank you very much. Do people have questions? Yeah, Tim.
I guess in any art form, you want, if you can have a draw card like a key talent, but surrounded by locals, because it not only is a draw card, but it also inspires and people learn through rehearsals, etc. So with your comment with regards to the Arts Fest, and especially the Jazz Festival early on, which I had a bit to do with, a percentage or a balance of the imported, which I don't quite like the term, but you bring a talent in for a reason, and a balance between that and local, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, no, I think a greater percentage of local talent would be great, because a lot of the time local talent is umbrellaed, but that basically means you just bring what you're doing. There's no real encouragement there. I certainly don't have any issue with bringing in artists to work, but I think if artists were actually brought in to work with locals towards creating work here, that's a whole different picture than just bringing in something that pre-exists. That can still happen, of course. There's a percentage of that, but I think the balance needs to shift.
But if that was a contractual agreement, that's guaranteed then, isn't it? Because most successful artists do want to share their talent with up and coming, so it's a very giving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Cheers.
Glenn?
Slightly provocative. Still feel a bit of the old boys network out there, that conservatism that perhaps keeps our young people at a distance, doesn't let them in. Was that not quite right?
I think.
You know what I'm getting at.
Yes, I do. I mean, I think there's room for everybody, and at the moment, yes, probably traditionally things have been set up around very established groups and organisations, and I'm not in any way, shape or form against that. I just think that strategically it would be sensible to have a look at what else is out there, and actually realise that this city in particular has a history of artists that have grown up on the margins, outside those established groups, and that has not only created a local culture but actually influenced the national one. And so Christchurch, those guys kicking against that conservative identity, have actually created a very distinct idea of what this place is, and that's exciting.
I think what you're saying is that it's not either or, it's room for both, and there has to be room for both. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a spectrum, and I think just it's about balancing at the moment. If it's skewed in one particular direction, that it's perhaps bringing a little bit more in a different direction. Yeah. That's
great. Look, thank you very much for your time. Always very interesting to hear from you. I can't come on Thursday. I'm really sorry. I'm not in town.
It goes till May 19th, so you've got heaps of time.
Okay, right. Well, I'll have to. I'll hold you. You can hold me to that.
You come with your sister.
Right. Which
Look
one?
for the woman with the pumpkin.
I'll bring them all.
Thank you very much.
Could I have invite Paul DeVol from Spark?